Hello, Mark.
Hi Dan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for partaking as a mock interview candidate. So for those who are watching, Mark is a currently an interview candidate for the Meta data scientist analytic position, along with other startups and tech companies like Chime and Amazon. And so we're gonna have Mark basically go through some of the product sense questions. This is not going to cover basically the entire like 30 to 40 minute, product sense questions that are asked on the Meta interview itself. Rather, it's more like a kind of like a sample in terms of, what kind of questions you could potentially be expected in, these analytic based questions at Meta, but also other product sense interview rounds at different companies as well. And lastly, this is a glimpse of, what are the premium content that's available in the monthly subscription course. Currently, right now, as of right now, there's about 5 recordings of these 1 hour mock interviews with questions and solutions. But also, this is a glimpse of what a coaching service looks like in terms of, if you were to pair up with me, what I could offer in preparation for your interview, and the prep being highly personalized based on the companies that you're interviewing for. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start the mock interview round, basically the process itself. So I'll go ahead and ask you the first product sense question, which is the following. So Mark, hopefully you've done some research, prior to this interview about Meta's portal device. Could you figure out ways to kind of measure engagement on Meta's portal?
Sure. Before I jump into the like a brainstorm matrix and like a plan to tackle this business question, I have a couple of clarifying questions. I think first of all is like what is like business purpose of measuring the engagement of this Meta portal device, and then how does that tie to the overall Meta mission or like a business objective?
Yeah, that's a very solid question. So basically, um, we just want to kind of understand whether Meta is like a viable business product. In terms of like user engagement, or like how active our basically customers of portal is. And so we want you to kind of come up with potential metrics that can help us. Our users, are they engaging on this portal device or not?
Gotcha. And just to make sure I understand the product correctly, so as far as I know, like a Meta Portal is like a hardware product that enable users to do like a video calls with better sound and video qualities, and also it has Alexa built-in, which you are able to watch news or schedule reminder, and also play your music on the portal. So yeah, is there any other feature I need to be aware of about this product?
I think that pretty much covers the core functionalities on the product itself.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you. So then, I think in order to measure the engagement on Meta portal device, I think there are I think there are two goals. First, for the user goals, I can type it here. How do you measure engagement? Let me first circle back to why the measure engagement is important, because at Facebook the mission is to give people the power to build a community and also bring the world closer. So this product can serve as the a tool enabling more users to stay engaged with Meta platforms. And then so I think for the user goal, it can by using the portal, they can do more do more video calls with their friends or their families, which also increase their time spent on Meta products like WhatsApp and Message Us. And then for the business goals, I think like engagement, we can see like how user keep coming back using these products and encourage them to stay engaged on Meta. And so I think so potential impact is like once we increase the user time spent on our platforms, which will in turn increase and grow our revenues for Meta.
Okay.
Cool. Then so I think I can brainstorm some metric around the Meta portal device. I think measure the engagement. I think first of all, I think so. I just have one follow-up question. So we are just talking about the user who already bought the portal devices, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Gotcha. So I think there are like a couple dimension we can look at. First is the activation, which how many people really after they purchase this product, how many login using this device on the device portal, and also how many how many people really login. I think login is the activation, and also start using the feature on the device. So maybe a start number of the video calls, and then number of the also the what else? I think video calls with not video call. We already have number of the video calls. But what other than video calls, like we talk about, they can use this portal to set up their calendar. So I also want other interaction. They can a meeting setup, or a music play, song play, etc. So basically, it's what's their interaction it should look like. And then next bucket, I will look at the retention. So when I say retention, it's about a daily active user, weekly active user, and monthly active user. So other than that, but we also need to define what is activeness of the users. Usually, we can look at what's the frequency a user do a video call. If the frequency is about 2 or 3 times a day, maybe we can look at a 2 weeks window to define whether a user is active or not. And then also I will look at the ratio, like a DAU, WAU ratio. This will be served as to measure the stickiness. How many users come back to us after a week or 2 weeks. So that's what I will be looking at. And then another dimension I will also touch on is the revenue, because at the end of the day, from the user goal, we try to have more people using this product so that they will spend more time on the portal, which is an opportunity for us to display some ads or embedding some sponsor contents when they interact with the user. That will also from a revenue perspective, we'll look at a average dollar money per user, and also every dollar as revenue per users. and then also like a look at like a customer lifetime value, etc. So yeah, and yeah, I think it's just like a three main category I'll be looking at. Is there any particular bucket you want me to talk more about?
No, I think that pretty much covers, you touch base on pretty good categories of metrics, activation, retention, and revenue. Now, can you kind of pick out maybe like three metrics that you think will be important? So suppose that you need to create some sort of a dashboard for, let's just say an executive, right? Who's part of the device and hardware team, right? And they're going to be the ones that are looking at this along with other product managers in that vertical, in that horizontal, basically the business of the hardware within Meta. Can you think about what three metrics you would want to display and then rank order those metrics from the most important to the least important?
Gotcha. So let me reframe what I just heard to make sure I understand the question correctly. So basically, assuming that we are building like a analytic dashboard, like empowering our business holders, it can be product manager or executives to measure the effectiveness of this product. So the question is about like picking three main primary metrics that can help them monitoring the metrics over time. So cool. Let me take a quick minute to organize my thoughts. Yeah, I think. Let me think. So I think the first and then ranking in the importance based on the importance level. So I think the first I think the first primary metric I will look at is the video like a call time in minutes, in hours per month. So because as you mentioned, the audience might be like a leadership or executive, so they will probably care more about the a high level overview, how much a total time they spend on this product over time, and then also to see whether they do more video calls with this new launch product. Another reason why I picked this metric is this metric also embodies all the other interaction, like we talk about, we do the video calls or set up meeting, play music. So the more activities they took with this device, the more time spent. So it's actually not that a video call time. I will be say a time spent in hours, and sorry, typo, spent in hours per month on portals. Portal. So yeah, and then I think the secondary metrics I will look at would be, because I think one of the core functionality with portal is the video call. So I want to know what's the total number of the video calls per month. So number of total number of video call per month. I think this will so we the reason for that would be I would like to know whether with these new products users are easier to do a video calls, and they will jump on the video call with their family or friends more frequently. So and then lastly, I will pick one from the revenue. So and for the monetization perspective, like a revenue per month. So I think that will be I'm not quite sorry, I'm not quite sure about how the ads will embed it on the portal, from from the Meta news feed, we know like when you go through the post, you will probably see some like a sponsored ads, but
Yeah.
like portal, could you give me some direction about how from the advertising side, how that would be embedding within this product or yeah.
Yeah. So in this case, let's just assume that there's really no like advertisement that are displayed in the portal device itself. So I wouldn't. So just kind of going back to the original questions, which is just focusing on engagement. Just leaving that monetization aside, can you think about perhaps any other metric that you may want to display in this metric-based dashboard?
Sure. So leaving the monetization aside, then I will do the retention like a DAU and user. I think this is the for all the Meta products. So we care about the daily active user, weekly active user, and monthly active users. So having this metric, having the active users on the dashboard will be give our audience the better understanding of how our products being used by the users and then their active needs. So yeah, does that make sense?
Okay, got it, got it. Now, how would you, so among these three metrics you have outlined, how would you go ahead and prioritize them from ranking from 1 to 3?
Sure. So from ranking 1 to 3 as per month, I think let me move the daily active user to the first one. So I think the first, I think the primary metric should be daily active user, weekly active user, monthly active users, and then by different a segmentation by country, region, or different language, etc. And then because we have to the main reason for that is this will serve as the retention metrics. We don't want just launch a product and user just use once or twice and then put that put that away. So that this will serve as the metric to know how what's their retention look like. So this will be my primary metrics. And then secondly, as I mentioned, the time spent is also critical, as that it will tell us about how how much time I spend with on a portal, and then and then what's their interactions. And yeah, and that is the total number of video calls. Yeah, does that make sense?
Okay. Okay, got it. All right. Now, I have a new question problem for you.
Cool.
The third question I have is following. Suppose a new feature is introduced in Portal, which is called call suggestion. This feature recommends calls to users. How would you design an A/B experiment on this feature?
Suppose a new feature introduced in Portal, which is called call suggestion with users to design A/B testing for so the question is about how do we really design the A/B experiment. I think there are a couple of steps we need to follow when it comes to the experiment. First, we need to state the hypothesis testing. No, I think first of all we need to define what's the success metrics. What are we going to measure when we launch this new feature. So I think the step one will be what will be the success measure look like? Success metrics. And then I assume that with these new features, the purpose is to make users more easily to start a call and then which will be the number of the codes will be will increase accordingly. So I will pick a average number of video calls per users as the metric we are going to measure. Does that make sense? Or
Okay.
yeah,
Sounds good.
so average like a number of video calls per user. And then secondly, we need to define like state the hypothesis testing. So I think the null here the null hypothesis will be the average number of the call per users between the control and treatment group will be the same, and alternative hypothesis will be the average number of calls per user between two groups are different. And then like we need to follow by like define the significance level, statistical power, and then the MDE to determine how much sample size we need. And then so let me put it down. Like state the hypothesis, and then followed by define the statistic what's that go like a parameters like a significance level, power, and the MDE. So alpha like a power and like a MDE, and then also we also need to determine what's the like a randomization unit. So I think this is kind of like a because like I will assume like in this setting the observation unit is the customer. So like it's better we can perform the randomization at the customer level, and then like also we just focus on the user who own the portal device, right? Otherwise we couldn't like measure these features, the effectiveness of this feature. So I will be like a customer who own like a portal device. Yeah, and then once we have that, like we are able to and like estimate the like experimentation time. So usually like the typical like experimentation time in A/B testing usually it will last for like 1 week or 2 weeks. The reason for that, if it is a short experimentation, then it will probably be problematic given there's like a day of the week effect. For instance, like users tend to do a video call on the weekend or on a weekday. So the best practices will be usually do at least more than 2 weeks. So here I will use the 2 weeks. Yeah, and then after that, how would you design? And then after we gather say 2 weeks of the data, then we are able to use the two sample t-test to make sure the lift in the metric across control and experiment and treatment groups are actually achieve statistically significance. So that's like determine and by checking the p-value, and so like a statistical significance. And then after say given that like a p-value is less than 0.05, then like it will be like to decide like whether we should launch this new feature or not. but like it's not just feature. Oh, by the way, like when we something I didn't mention about is that we other than just pick one success metric, it's better we can also have some of like a guardrail metric, which is like a metric which shouldn't be degraded in pursuit of the success metric. So in here I will use I think the like as revenue or time spent on portal as the guardrail. So like as a guardrail metric, but like the last step is the launch the new feature or not. And other than checking the statistical significant result from the experimentation, we also need to involve the business holder to see what's the like a practical significance look like, and also do some like a cost and benefit analysis to make sure it's gonna like take too much resources to launch these new features. So that will be the next step. Yeah, does that make sense?
Okay, sounds good. And you defined some good structure there, but in terms of are there any other details you may want to populate?
Any other detail? So I think like I think I will add more details around like this cost adjust. I think there are some like we need to also do some like a validity checks, for example, to make sure that the like a observation we gather should be independent with each other, and also whether there's some seasonal or holiday effect. And also another effect I can think of is like novelty effect, which means that when the new features on the product appears, given its novelty, user like may respond to this feature positively at first, but over time, the novelty of the feature will wear off, then the behavior will return to normal. So we need, in that case, we should probably extend the experimentation to gather more data to validate that. So yeah.
Okay, got it. I have a question for you. So what do you think would happen if this change was made over let's just say Christmas weekend?
Over Christmas weekend.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I think like if we launch the experimentation during the holidays like Christmas, then we will probably see the the final result is like a kind of like a inflated or overly optimistic, because like people especially during the COVID, most people cannot go home to like have a family reunion. So like they will probably do more video calls like during the holiday. So in that case, we will probably get the inflated average number of calls per user like during this time. So in order to get a better reliable result, we should probably like how do I put this? We should probably gather more data and like, because I'm assuming like so yeah, so probably like extend the experimentation time. Yeah, does that make sense? Or
okay, got it. Okay. All right, so this is the end of the question portion, and obviously, I would have wanted to ask you more follow-up questions, but once again, this is more of like a simulation exercise, right? So if we're to do the actual mock interview, then it'll be a lot more comprehensive than this. But I just want to go through each question at a time from the beginning to the end, and we'll talk about what you did well, and what are some areas of improvement. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah. And just kind of before I actually dive into that, I would say just overall, I think the way you were approaching each question your communication was good. It was very clear to understand. It was you expressed your ideas very clearly, so it was very easy to sort of follow through what your reasonings are, right, on each of the questions that you were addressing. So that's really good that you were doing that. The second thing I liked about the overall approach of how you were approaching the problems were that your solution styles were very structured. So you didn't just kind of ramble. You had a framework in terms of how you're going to respond to each of the questions. So that made things very easy to follow as an interviewer, and that's really good that you were doing that. But what, I would say that there was one thing that I would kind of refine your response, because I noticed that there were some moments when you seem a little bit hesitant or unsure about whether your response is correct or not. I would try to refrain from doing that because you want to project confidence. And if you're not sure about certain things, just don't bring that up at all. So for instance, you asked me about, is there a way for Meta to generate revenue? Like, are there some advertisement display, right? When you're not sure whether there's a particular feature that already exists in the product or not, it's best not to just bring it up. Because if you bring it up, then you could expect some follow-up questions on that. And that can cause you some troubles later down the road. In fact, those who are watching this, that's actually one of the key things that a lot of candidates often kind of make mistakes on. They read some techniques off the internet, and then they'll basically just kind of rehash it and talk about it during the interview. And because they don't really know like the actual reasoning, or they don't know the exact details behind why that technique exists, or whether a particular feature on a product exists, then they just sort of bring it up, but then like when an interviewer asks follow-up questions, they're not able to justify. So it's best not to bring up something if you're not really sure. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out.
Yeah. So projecting more confidence, I think that's something you really need to work on, because in each of the three questions, I noticed that you were kind of hesitant in terms of your response, and you really want to be able to project certainty in your responses rather than hesitations.
Gotcha.
All right. So that's just a general overview of what I was kind of gauging off of off of how you're responding. Now let's go through each question at a time. So starting with the first question, how would you measure engagement on Meta's portal device? So I think I really love how you were approaching this with a good framework: activation, retention, revenue. However, though, you were kind of missing the main focus of this question, which is engagement, right? If I asked a question about how would you measure success on Meta's portal device, right? Then that might be accommodating for activation, retention plus revenue in this case. But then I'm more talking about the engagement. So it's not so much about the monetization I care about. It's more about the retention here, right? Activation being the secondary thing, and the primary thing being retention. And so I would have loved to see more focus on these two categories. And it would have actually been fine if you just left out revenue, because that wasn't the main focus of the question, which is engagement. So that's something to kind of look out for. Really understand the differentiation between when an interviewer is asking, how do you measure happiness, measure satisfaction, measure engagement, measure success? These four sound the same, but to a certain extent, they're a bit different. And so make sure you have a clear understanding of what the question is. And you're not just listing some arbitrary set of metrics, but you're actually listing metrics that actually answer the question. Okay?
Yeah, sounds good. Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good. So like did you have other suggestions on like a brainstorm the metrics when we were asked about the question? Because sometimes I'll be stuck on like, okay, this is all the metric I can think of on top of my head, but I don't know whether are they sufficient, or like what will be the Like when we brainstorm metric, what will be like a fair number of the metric we should bring it out in the interview?
Yeah, so I would say that just start with it's actually so that's a really good question. It's actually a common questions I get from clients all the time. But basically, the ideal I think set of the way you should be addressing these kind of metric based questions is think about 2 to 3 categories of metrics. So you kind of did that here, and then within each category, list 2 to 3 metrics.
Mm-hmm.
So this or itself already provided a good, decent, comprehensive set of metrics.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you.
And when it comes to these type of questions about measuring a feature or product, a natural sort of following question is like how would you prioritize which metric to focus on?
Mm-hmm.
So that is expected. So this is more like a shout out to those who are preparing for these data scientists, product data science interviews. When you're practicing, yourself to just kind of make sure, think about how do you measure a product, but also when you list these metrics, think about how you would prioritize them based on a different focus. So that's why I asked the follow-up question, which is, how would you pick out these 3 metrics and then how would you rank order them, right? And so considering the fact that, really the main focus is engagement, I think it makes sense to focus on the active users set of metrics across these three different windows. The only thing I wasn't really too clear on, and I think this is something that you should have clarified a little bit more, is the definition of active. So what does it mean for a user to be active? And that's something that I noticed clients will kind of gloss over, which is that they will just spew out, okay, I'm going to measure DAU, WAU, and MAU, right? But then they don't clearly define what are the behaviors that actually define actions. And a key action can be a set of multiple behaviors, or it can be just one behavior, right? And in the case of the portal, there's all these different primary functions, right? You make a call. I'm sure you can also browse on a web application as well, right? You have this calendar app, you can set up meetings and stuff like that, right? So these are all these different type of actions. And so, do you want the key action to be defined based on calls only, or do you want it to be expressed based on a set of actions, right? So that's something to clearly define in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in this case, even though one of the portal's primary function is like a video calls, it still doesn't mean that some users might just use it only for calendar purpose, right? Yeah. And so in that case, I would just have like an inclusive set of if users are active in the form of any sort of app engagement, whether it's on a calendar, whether it's checking an email, whether it's making a call, any set of like in-app engagement, then I would consider that as an active engagement.
Gotcha. Yeah.
All right. So now let's look at the A/B experiment part, right? So even before you talked about success metric, do you think there could have been one topic that you could have fleshed out a bit more on?
I think one thing I was missing is probably I didn't ask like clarifying questions around why this is important and how this feature tied to the overall business goal. So I just jump directly into the framework without asking.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's precisely right. Yeah. So for those who are watching this, this is another sort of common mistake, which is like candidates have a tendency, and I think it kind of makes sense because a lot of what we do are very technical focused. And so we have a natural tendency to produce a technical response from the get-go. But we have to keep in mind that data science project from the beginning and also the end, right, are always business focused. So we have a business stakeholder we're working with. They provide a context of what their needs are. And then we basically provide some, we basically understand it in terms of, what the business context is, translate that into some statistical slash technical methodology, and then we deliver it back into the business, right? So we also have to think about it in terms of, okay, whenever we need to provide a response to these type of, product based questions, the structure is always business, technical, and then business. And so in this case, what Hank did was he primarily focused on the technical part. He kind of glossed over the business elements in the A/B experiment itself. And it's really important to just also just cover the business part of it as well, because the interviewer is sort of gauging, if this was an actual project that you were actually performing, in real life, like how would you actually, deliver this, right? And so you want to provide a glimpse. And so it's really important for you to cover the business aspect of this question as well. And so, yeah, like focusing on, what is the purpose of this experiment, right? But also focusing on clarifying what this new future looks like. You didn't walk through the user journey of what the current process is, and you didn't also walk through the experience of what this new future would do. And you sort of you basically just kind of overlooked it, so skipped it over, right? So just make sure you kind of you flesh it out. And in this case, the call suggestion would essentially be like a UI. And so you could kind of imagine if you go to like a call list, right? It just looks like an endless scroll of all these different numbers, right? So instead of having to go through scroll to find the number that you want to actually dial, imagine like there's like a call suggestion at the very top. Maybe it's like top 3 calls that are suggested to you based on the likelihood that your intent is actually to make a call to that person, right? So imagine what the benefit will be, right? Maybe it could help save time. Maybe it can also improve engagement as well, right? And so fleshing out the context are just as important as covering the technical aspect of it as well. So once you paint the picture of this, from there, Hank, what you did, right, and what you did in terms of laying out the structures are good.
Yeah, I think that's a great advice, and I that one of the most commonly mistake. Like I sometimes will ignore, not ignore, like I forgot. So like before we jump into any solution or like provide a framework, we need to stress on like what is the business purpose of this question, and also go through what's the user journey look like when they interact with this new feature, provide some of the context around from a business perspective. I think it will make the answer more complete. So yeah, I really appreciate this.
Yeah, of course. Now, I do want to walk through a couple things here. So I think you laid out a good procedure of running an A/B experiment, but I felt that there were a couple details that were somewhat missing there. So success metric, the average number of calls per user, that I like the idea. So I think that works. Because this metric wouldn't necessarily violate the statistical assumption that the observations are independent in this case, right? You're aggregating at the user level. And so that's why this metric would work. In terms of stating the hypothesis, so I have a question for you. Could it be possible that just having some UI with arbitrary list of numbers, like that itself could have an effect?
Can you say that again? I'm not fully.
Yeah. So let me just rephrase that. So basically, if you think about the call suggestion, right? There's really 2 elements to this, right? So there's the UI, and then there's the algorithm. Right? So when you're displaying this at the very top, how do you know if there's an actual effect, right? Meaning that people are engaging a lot more because of this UI, right? How do you know if it is a UI that is actually driving the engagement, or it's the algorithm itself that is driving the engagement, or the interaction of both?
Gotcha. So are we talking about like confounding variable.
Yeah, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we really so
So yeah, so in this case, this would essentially be kind of like a multivariate testing. So your control is that okay, here's a version without any. Okay, and then the second test is basically just a UI with some arbitrary like list of numbers, list of calls. Okay, and then the third one is UI plus the algorithm itself.
Gotcha. Like a multiple. So it's not just like a two groups I see.
Three groups. So it would be three groups, one control, one treatment number one and treatment number two. Yep.
And gotcha. Like this is like a UI and the second one UI plus like a algorithm.
Yep. And essentially you would be doing like a pairwise t-test. So you're comparing the control against T1 and then comparing the control against T2. And then you look at the relative lift along with the statistical significance.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then you make the decision that, okay, hey, you know what? This algorithm, basically this call suggestion with the UI plus algorithm is statistically significant and it, with the relative lift being positive in the positive direction, right? Then you would conclude that, essentially, you would want to rule out the call suggestion to a larger population of the portal device users.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's something I didn't I didn't think of when I when I was asked about this question. Like maybe like when we talk about the UI change, we also need to think about whether the like a confounding effect from other driver like algorithm itself can also make an impact. So how do we really validate that? So this is
gotcha. It's about observing the sensitivity of the metric, right? So when you make certain change, like how do you know if the change is coming from, changing the metric is coming from basically what like the condition they have changed, right? Or is there some sort of like extraneous factors that are in the play here, right? So it's just a lot about being a bit more keen. Being able to kind of differentiate, where is the effect really coming from?
Gotcha. Yeah.
And in terms of defining the statistical parameter alpha power MD, I would have loved for you to actually flesh them out instead of just saying, okay, I will go ahead and list alpha power and MD, right? So you could have cited like go ahead.
No. I was asking maybe elaborate more on each of these three components, like what was the significance level, and then how do we define the statistical power or etc. Or because sometimes I feel like it's kind of like a common sense that like we need these three to determine what's the sample size needed. But I really didn't touch on the details about each of these.
Yeah, bring it out anyways, because the interviewer doesn't know whether you actually know it or not, right?
Gotcha.
You're the main focus here is to provide evidence that you do know how to run an A/B experiment, and so I would not, I wouldn't avoid, like I wouldn't, like basically like bring up anyways, right? Even if it's common sense per se, or even if it seems obvious, like so it's so really important to bring out these details.
Gotcha.
So in this case, you could have just started off by citing some industry standard numbers, right? Obviously that can kind of change depending on the type of test that you're running and what are the type 1 and type 2 risks you're willing to tolerate, when you're designing and running these type of experiments, but standard set of values like alpha being set at like 0.05, power being 0.880, and MD, being somewhere between 1 to 5% in this case. Actually, let me truncate that value to like 1 to 3%. 1 to 3% would have been reasonable. And of course, like, you know, you might expect the interviewer to ask you some additional follow-up questions about, like, why do you like, okay, so putting aside industry standard values, like, you know, why can't you set the alpha at 0.1 or power at 0.7 or MD like at 5% or something like that, right? So then in that case, then, you know, you can kind of follow up on, you know, different values that you may want to explore.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and randomization unit makes sense. Estimating the experimentation, basically the experimentation time set at 2 weeks makes sense. The only thing you forgot to mention is like, how would you determine the sample size? So you would have had to determine the sample size after step 3, right?
Yeah, determine
And you also
it should come before determine the time, right?
Yeah, once you know what the sample size is, then from there, you basically can figure out what the experimentation time is.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yep, and do mention the statistical tests you would be using in this case.
Yeah, so I was saying the two sample t-test.
Yep.
Yeah, because we are measuring the like a mean value across like a multiple groups. But in this case, right now we have 3 groups. So maybe we should use ANOVA instead.
No, so ANOVA would only give you if at least one if at least one pair of the groups are different, but it wouldn't give you information. Sorry, if at least one group is if at least one group is different from all of the other groups. That's what ANOVA will provide. But it wouldn't necessarily give you information on which pair of groups are actually different.
Pairs of group.
Right.
Yeah.
So so in that case, so in this case, the type of statistical test you would actually want to do is pairwise t-test, comparing 2 sample means.
Pairwise, yeah. T-test. Yeah. I should probably brush out ANOVA, and I think I'm mostly familiar with the 2 groups, but like a pairwise simple t-test should be used in this scenario. So yeah.
And the last point, launching the new feature, I think you covered the essence of what to do on that sense. So overall, you did a good job. You provided good structure in terms of how you were responding to these questions. But really, I think the main focus for you is that just make sure you're providing details that really matter to the questions, and you're leaving out the details that doesn't really matter. Okay. And so as long as you basically just continue to practice, come on these mock interviews with me, and basically just go through the practice questions in the subscription course, then I think you'll be well prepared for the product interview at Meta.
Thank you.
Yep. Great. Well, I enjoy this mock interview with you, and I look forward to more sessions like this with you in the future.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your time.
Yep. Sounds good. All right. Thanks, Mark. Bye.
Bye.